What if I told you that the name Prince William and Kate Middleton just revealed for their fourth baby wasn't only a sweet tribute, but a coded message? A message aimed directly at the heart of the royal family. A name chosen with precision, emotion, defiance, and love. One that has already split the monarchy right down the middle. Because today, they didn't just announce a baby. They announced history. They announced a seismic shift in the House of Windsor. They announced a tribute that stunned even those who thought nothing in that family could surprise them anymore. The name is Diana Elizabeth. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. And if you think that sounds simple, you have no idea what's coming. Let's start with the question everyone is whispering about. Why now? Why this moment? Why choose a name so heavy with meaning, so charged with royal memory, so perfectly balanced between past and present? Why choose a name that echoes both the woman William lost and the woman Kate admired? Why choose a name that pulls two queens, one by legacy, one by life, into the next generation? Or maybe the real question is this: what made William whisper that this was the only name that felt right? But we'll get there. Trust me, we'll get there. Right now, picture this. Kensington Palace, just after sunrise. A soft fog still touching the gardens. Staff walking fast, heads down, phones buzzing in pockets. A sense of urgency in the halls. A meeting behind a closed door. William and Kate standing side by side. Their expressions calm, but their hearts pounding. They know what they're about to reveal will touch nerves across continents. They know fans will cheer. Critics will rage. Journalists will write until their fingers hurt. And somewhere, someone inside the family will clench their jaw so tightly their teeth might crack. Because when you choose a name like Diana Elizabeth, you aren't choosing lightly. You're planting a flag. That's why this moment matters now. That's why this story isn't just about a name. It's about loyalty. It's about memory. It's about the battle between the past and the future. It's about William stepping fully into the role he was born for. Not the crown, not the title, but the responsibility of shaping the monarchy his way, through his values, through his heart. And here's something few people know. This was not the original plan name. There was another name on the table. A traditional one. A safe one. A name Charles approved without hesitation. But late one evening, according to palace staff who overheard fragments, Kate placed her hand on William's and said something that changed everything. A sentence so simple, so quiet, yet so powerful that William didn't sleep for hours afterward. No, I won't reveal that sentence yet. Not yet. Because you need context. You need the pieces. You need to understand the emotional storm surrounding this one choice. Because naming a royal baby isn't like naming any other child. It's a chess move, a declaration, a symbol, and sometimes it's a rebellion disguised as tradition. Let's zoom out for a moment. From the outside, the monarchy looks polished, controlled, refined. But behind those palace walls, names carry weight. Names carry ghosts. Names carry grudges. Names carry history like wet paint that never dries. Diana. For William, that name is love, warmth, childhood laughter, long car rides through London, whispered conversations before bedtime. But for others in the family, that name is scandal, tension, unfinished business, old wounds that never healed, and a legacy so powerful it still overshadows the reigning generation. Elizabeth. For Kate, that name is respect, admiration, guidance. A mentor figure wrapped in grace, discipline, and iron resolve. For the royal institution, it's the embodiment of stability, the longest reigning monarch, the anchor of a changing world. A name so iconic it defines British identity itself. So when William and Kate combined those names, they didn't just make a tribute. They made a statement. They made a legacy. They made a new branch of the monarchy. One not rooted in the past's mistakes or the present's politics, but in the future's hope. But here's what most people don't know. The announcement wasn't supposed to go public when it did. Something leaked. Someone spoke. And the moment that name hit the internet, the world froze. Millions of people stared at their screens. Social media lit up like a wildfire in dry grass. Newsrooms went into full-speed mode. Royal fans cried. Critics snarled. Conspiracy theories multiplied. And inside the palace, a senior royal walked out of a room without saying a word, leaving their advisors stunned. The silence, according to one insider, was cold enough to freeze the Thames. What causes silence like that? Jealousy? Maybe. Fear? Possibly. Guilt? That's for you to decide. Because here's the twist. The name Diana Elizabeth wasn't meant to be just an announcement. It was part of a larger plan, one William and Kate drafted carefully, quietly, intentionally. A plan tied to their children's roles. A plan tied to the modern monarchy. A plan tied to something Princess Diana once predicted. And yes, we'll get there. But we're not done setting the stage yet. Let's talk about timing. Why reveal the name now, in the middle of a turbulent era? Why choose a period marked by tension with the Sussexes, by questions about the monarchy's future, by the public's demand for transparency, by whispers about Charles's health, by shifting generational expectations? Because this is the moment when symbolism matters most. A monarchy survives not by accident, but by narrative, story, meaning, emotion. And right now, William and Kate are shaping a narrative with surgical precision. They are positioning their family as the heart of the future. They are rebuilding trust through authenticity. They are leaning into legacy, not running from it. And they are reminding the world that the next reign won't be a copy of the last one. Now let's talk about reactions. Some royals applauded the name. Some shed a tear. Some smiled for the cameras, but clenched their fists once the lights turned off. And one person was so blindsided they reportedly muttered, "This changes everything," before leaving a private gathering without saying goodbye. That moment, just that sentence, tells you everything about the impact of this name. The fracture it reveals, the tension it exposes, the shift it initiates. And that's why this story matters. Because today's royal announcement didn't simply honor two women. It revealed the emotional map of the entire royal family. Who feels threatened? Who feels honored? Who feels overshadowed? Who feels replaced? Who feels vindicated? Now let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed how William rarely surprises anyone? How he plays by the book? How he avoids unnecessary drama? How he chooses calm over chaos? So when William, of all people, chooses a name guaranteed to ignite conversations, comparisons, and controversy, you know something deeper is happening. And here's the part that should make you lean in for the next chapter. According to two separate palace insiders, William had a private moment, just days before the announcement, where he looked at a framed photo of Diana, wiped his eyes, and whispered something no one could quite make out. One aide said he heard the words, "I hope I made you proud." Another claims it sounded like, "It was always going to be you." Is that true? Only William knows for sure. But something happened. Something emotional. Something powerful. Something personal. Something that pushed this name to the top of the list and kept it there even when others quietly opposed it. But before you think this is just about nostalgia or sentiment, remember, every royal action has layers. Every revelation hides a complication. Every choice triggers a consequence. Which brings us to the unanswered tension hanging in the air. What did Kate say? What single sentence shifted this decision from a polite discussion to a firm declaration? Because yes, that happened. And yes, that sentence mattered. And yes, you will hear it. But not yet. Right now, I want you to hold on to this image. A quiet palace hallway. A door closing softly. Footsteps walking away. The sound of a breath someone didn't realize they were holding. And a name, whispered like a promise. Diana Elizabeth. And trust me when I tell you, what came next would change everything. And no one saw it coming. What if everything William did today, the name he chose, the timing of it, the emotional weight behind it, was rooted in a single promise he made when he was still a boy standing in the shadow of a tragedy he never saw coming? What if the name Diana Elizabeth wasn't simply a tribute, but the fulfillment of a vow whispered into the air almost 3 decades ago? Because that's where this story truly begins. Not in Kensington Palace, not in Buckingham Palace, not in the headlines, not in the comment sections, but in a room inside Kensington Palace in 1997, where a 15-year-old boy made a silent promise over the memory of the woman who meant everything to him. Let's go back there. Let's start with the moment that shaped Prince William more than any royal duty ever could. It was the morning after Diana died. A nation was waking up heartbroken, confused, devastated. Millions turned on their televisions with shaking hands, praying the news wasn't true. Outside Kensington Palace, flowers started appearing faster than staff could clear paths for mourners. The world was in shock, but no one, not a single person on earth, was as shattered as the two boys behind those palace walls. William didn't cry at first. He went silent, completely silent. Staff later said he walked like his soul had left his body, like he wasn't fully there, like he had learned, overnight, that grief isn't a feeling, it's a collapse. But it was that night, long after the world had gone quiet, long after the reporters had left for the evening, long after Charles had retreated to his own room, long after Harry had fallen asleep clutching one of Diana's sweaters, that William went to her room. He opened the door slowly. He didn't turn on the light. He didn't need to. The moon was bright enough to illuminate the outlines of her dresses, the edge of her vanity table, the scattered perfume bottles she had used just days earlier. He walked inside. He touched the sleeve of one of her dresses. And he whispered something. No one knows exactly what he said, but a housekeeper passing the hallway swore she heard the words, "I won't let them erase you." Erase. That word carries weight in the royal family. Because the monarchy, like any institution, has a way of shaping narratives, smoothing edges, rewriting uncomfortable chapters, steering public memory. And Diana? She wasn't smooth. She wasn't quiet. She wasn't obedient. She wasn't controllable. She was unpredictable, emotional, compassionate, human. She made people feel something the palace rarely allowed. Her death didn't erase her. Her absence didn't erase her. Her silence didn't erase her. But there were those in the institution who preferred her memory to soften, to fade, to be sanded down until only the parts that fit the royal mold remained. And William, he knew it. He felt it. He felt the tension between honoring her and protecting the monarchy. He felt the tightrope he would one day walk, the rope between duty and heart, between past and future, between mother and crown. And on that night in 1997, he made a promise to himself, to Diana, to her memory, that one day he would restore her name not as a story of sadness or scandal, but as a symbol of strength. So let's move forward. Years passed. William grew. He learned the language of power. He learned silence. He learned diplomacy. He learned to hide what he felt. He learned how to be a Windsor and how to be a Spencer at the same time, one by duty, one by blood. But the promise never left him. It lived quietly inside him. It surfaced in subtle ways, in gestures most people never noticed. When he insisted on walking behind his mother's coffin with dignity, when he launched the Diana Award, when he spoke about her candidly in interviews, when he told the world she would have been a nightmare grandmother but full of love, when he put her engagement ring on Kate's finger, when he said she would have adored Kate. Every time he mentioned his mother publicly, you could see the boy inside the man, the boy who lost her, the boy who loved her, the boy who vowed not to let her fade. But here's the part outsiders forget. Diana wasn't just William's mother. She was Harry's mother too. And inside that dynamic lies a complication the public rarely talks about. The brothers loved her differently. William's love was protective. Harry's love was rebellious. William held on to her memory as a guide. Harry held on to her memory as a weapon. So when Harry named his first daughter Lilibet Diana, some people whispered that William should have been the one to name a child after their mother first. William never said a word about that rumor. But some insiders believe it stung. Not out of jealousy, out of responsibility, out of longing, out of the feeling that honoring Diana's memory was something he wanted to do on his own terms, with the right moment, with the right child, with the right intention. But William waited. He waited through George. He waited through Charlotte. He waited through Louis. He waited until he felt the moment was finally right. Not politically, not strategically, but emotionally. So why now? That's where the story takes a turn. Because something happened recently, something private, something unpublicized, something only a handful of palace insiders know, that pushed William toward the name Diana again. It began with a letter, not a modern letter, not an email, not a text. A physical letter, handwritten, preserved, old, found in a box of Diana's belongings that had been kept sealed for decades. Kate was the one who found it. Let's slow down here, because this moment matters. Kate had been going through old family collections at the Spencer estate during a private visit, something the public never knew about. She wasn't looking for anything specific. She wasn't digging for secrets. She was simply sorting items with Diana's sisters, who had begun organizing archives and keepsakes. And then Kate found it. A small envelope, yellowed at the edges, with a note inside written in Diana's unmistakable handwriting. It wasn't addressed to William or Harry. It wasn't addressed to Charles. It wasn't addressed to anyone specifically. It looked more like a personal reflection, a motherhood journal entry, a quiet piece of her heart captured on paper. And in that letter, Diana wrote something extraordinary. She wrote that if she ever had another daughter or a granddaughter, she hoped she would carry not her name, but her strength. She wrote that names don't make a person, but legacies do. And at the bottom, in softer ink, almost as if she hesitated before writing it, she added a single line. Still, it would warm my heart to hear my name live on in gentleness, not tragedy. Kate read that line 3 times, maybe 4. Then she folded the paper and kept it close, waiting for the right moment to share it with William. When she finally did, he reportedly didn't speak for nearly a full minute. Just sat there, silent, breathing slowly, processing. You can imagine the weight of it. A message from the mother he lost. A message about legacy. A message about love. A message about the future he was building. And that brings us back to the present. Because William didn't choose the name Diana out of impulse. He didn't choose it out of competition. He didn't choose it for headlines. He chose it to keep a promise. The same promise made in that moonlit room in 1997. He wouldn't let them erase her. Not her memory. Not her voice. Not her legacy. Not her impact. And certainly not her name. But where does Elizabeth come into all this? Why combine 2 names with such overpowering meaning? Why merge the mother who broke the royal mold with the queen who embodied it? Oh, that question leads us straight to Kate. Because this wasn't just William's decision. Kate had her own reason, her own emotional story, her own private moment, for insisting on adding Elizabeth. And not everyone in the palace approved. But here's the twist. When William and Kate ultimately revealed the full name, it wasn't just the royal family that reacted. Someone outside the immediate family responded too. Someone whose opinion William did not expect. Someone whose reaction shook the palace staff. Someone whose emotional response said more about the name than any royal statement ever could. And that reaction? That's where the next chapter begins. Because just when William thought he had fulfilled his promise, Kate revealed a truth that changed everything. There's something almost haunting about the moment Kate Middleton first held the letter Diana had written years before her death. Something unspoken passed between the past and the present. Something tender. Something heavy. Something that made Kate think, not about royal protocol, not about palace approval, not about public reaction, but about the kind of woman she wanted her daughter to become. But before we get to that, let's start with the question everyone is asking right now. Why did Kate insist on adding the name Elizabeth? And the answer isn't the one people think they know. It wasn't just respect for Queen Elizabeth II. It wasn't just tradition. It wasn't just symbolism. It was something deeply personal, something Kate never talked about publicly, something rooted in a little-known bond between her and the late Queen. One forged quietly behind the scenes, away from cameras, away from headlines, away from public performances. Because Kate Middleton, long before the world accepted her as the future queen, had a struggle she carried silently. A battle she rarely showed, but one the late Queen saw clearly from the very beginning. And it all started long before Kate married into the monarchy. Picture young Catherine Middleton. Smart, composed, well-raised, but thrust into the harshest spotlight on earth. She wasn't born into privilege. She wasn't raised for royal life. She wasn't trained to walk the tightrope between public expectation and personal identity. She was a college girl one moment, and a future queen the next. Reporters swarmed her. Paparazzi chased her. Commentators dissected her every facial expression, every outfit, every family member, every decision, and the pressure nearly broke her. Few people know this, but there was a period, early on, when Kate seriously questioned if she could survive in royal life. Not physically, emotionally, socially, mentally. Because the weight of public scrutiny isn't just heavy, it's suffocating. So who helped her the most? It wasn't William. Not because he didn't want to. He did. But he was trapped in the machine, royal duties, responsibilities, media demands. It wasn't Diana's sisters. They barely knew her yet. It wasn't palace staff. They watched her but didn't understand her. No, the one person who saw Kate's fear and guided her through it was Queen Elizabeth II. And she did it in her own way. Quietly, gently, Without fanfare, without praise. Let's go back to one specific moment. A moment Kate remembers, but rarely speaks about. It was shortly after her wedding. The world was celebrating. Newspapers printed joyful headlines. People cheered as she stepped onto the balcony. But days later, when the excitement faded, reality hit her like a slap. She wasn't Catherine Middleton anymore. She was the Duchess of Cambridge, a future queen, a pillar of the monarchy, a symbol of national identity. Imagine it. Imagine waking up one day and realizing your entire life, your future, your children, your identity, all of it, no longer belongs entirely to you. Kate broke down, not in public, in private. She cried. She doubted herself. She wondered if she could fit this life, this role, this destiny she never asked for. And Queen Elizabeth saw it. One afternoon, during a small event at Balmoral, the Queen invited Kate for tea. No advisors, no formalities, just the two of them. Kate was nervous, so nervous. Her hands trembled as she poured her tea. The Queen noticed. Of course she noticed. And she said something Kate never forgot. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be steady. Steady. That word became the anchor Kate held onto for years. Steady through scandals. Steady through press attacks. Steady through family tensions. Steady through pregnancies. Steady through the Sussex drama. Steady through uncertainty. Steady through change. And the Queen wasn't done. She leaned in, her voice softer than anyone had ever heard. Dignity isn't about silence. It's about choosing when to speak. That line shaped Kate Middleton more than any royal lesson ever could. The Queen wasn't teaching her how to be royal. She was teaching her how to survive. And Kate never forgot it. Now let's talk about the deeper layer. The one royal watchers miss. Queen Elizabeth didn't just guide Kate. She trusted her. She respected her. She believed in her. And that was rare. The late Queen didn't give approval easily. She gave it sparingly, cautiously, deliberately. And when she gave it, she meant it. Kate earned it not through charm, not through glamour, not through performance, but through substance. She showed loyalty. She showed restraint. She showed wisdom. She showed patience. She showed empathy. She showed discipline. Qualities the Queen valued fiercely. So when Kate found Diana's letter, the one revealing the emotional wish for a granddaughter to carry her strength, she didn't think only about Diana. She thought about the Queen who guided her through her darkest moments. She thought about steady leadership. She thought about compassion wrapped in discipline. She thought about the union between the two legacies that shaped William's life. The free-spirited warmth of Diana and the unwavering stability of Elizabeth. Kate didn't want her daughter to be shaped by just one influence. She wanted balance. She wanted strength and grace. She wanted freedom and responsibility. She wanted fire and composure. She wanted Diana's heart and Elizabeth's resilience. So when William came to her and said he wanted to honor his mother, Kate didn't hesitate. But she also didn't stay silent. She told him something that made him stop cold. Something that shifted the naming conversation completely. She said, "We can honor your mother, but our daughter will need the strength of mine. Not mine, as in her biological mother, Carol. Mine, as in the woman who guided her into royal life. The woman who steadied her. The woman who taught her the art of silence without losing one's voice. The woman who became her mentor. The Queen." That was the moment William understood. This wasn't just his tribute. It was theirs. And here's the part that surprised even Kate. When she suggested Elizabeth as the middle name, William didn't just agree. He felt something shift inside him. A sense of continuity. A bridge between the two most influential women in his life. His mother, whose legacy the palace had struggled to honor properly, and his grandmother, whose legacy held the institution together. It was the perfect balance. But what Kate didn't tell William, not immediately, was that there was another reason she chose Elizabeth. A reason far more personal, far more emotional, far more revealing. It had nothing to do with royal symbolism, nothing to do with monarchy, nothing to do with public expectations. It had to do with fear, her own fear. Because 3 years earlier, during a private visit to Windsor, Queen Elizabeth told Kate something surprising, something intimate, something vulnerable. They were walking through the gardens when the Queen slowed, turned to her, and said, "There will come a day when I am no longer here. When that happens, remember this. Your greatest power will be the legacy you pass to your children." Kate nodded, thinking the Queen meant the typical royal expectations. duty, pride, service. But the queen wasn't finished. Give them names that carry meaning, she said. Names that remind them of who they are and who they must become. That sentence stayed with Kate, not as pressure, as guidance, as comfort. So when William stood before her and whispered that he wanted to name their fourth daughter after his mother, Kate felt something deep inside her shift. She felt the weight of legacy. She felt Diana's warmth. She felt Elizabeth's steadiness. And she knew, instantly, that if this child was meant to carry two legacies, she needed both names. Diana for heart, Elizabeth for strength. She didn't tell William the whole truth that night. Not yet. Not until the decision became official. Because Kate, despite her quiet exterior, has a strategic mind. She knows when to speak. She knows when to wait. She learned from the queen herself. But here's the twist. Not everyone in the palace approved. Some believed the name Diana should stand alone. Some believed it was too emotional. Some believed it reopened old wounds. Some believed it would cause comparisons with Harry and Meghan's daughter. Some believed it linked the new baby too closely to past controversies. And one senior royal, one whose approval mattered, thought the name Elizabeth should not be used at all. Why? Because, according to palace insiders, they believed the public would interpret it as a political move, a symbolic claim to the future monarchy, a declaration of dominance. A subtle message that William and Kate were positioning themselves as the heirs to Elizabeth's legacy, not Charles. This royal feared that name combination, feared its symbolism, feared its message. And Kate sensed it. She felt the tension. She felt the disapproval. She felt the coldness in the room the moment she said the name aloud. But she didn't back down, because by then, she'd already made up her mind. This child would carry both names. The name of the woman William lost, and the name of the woman Kate learned from. A daughter who would grow up with the balance the monarchy needs most, compassion and strength. And when they finally revealed the name, the reaction was stronger than they expected, stronger, louder, more emotional, including from one royal who Kate thought would approve, but who instead went completely silent. And that silence? It terrified palace staff, because silence from that person never means acceptance. It means trouble. And just when Kate thought the worst reaction was over, another shock arrived, a reaction she did not expect from someone she never expected to re-enter the story, someone whose voice carried a sting, someone who would ignite the next wave of drama. You would think that announcing a baby's name, no matter how royal, no matter how symbolic, would be a moment of pure joy behind palace walls, a moment of celebration, a moment of unity, a moment when the Windsor family's differences fade, even if only for a breath. But that's not what happened, not even close. Because when William and Kate revealed the name Diana Elizabeth to the inner royal circle, the reaction wasn't warm applause or quiet approval. It was chaos wrapped in politeness, shock masked by smiles, joy overshadowed by tension, and worst of all, a silence so thick, so deliberate, so unmistakable that staff later described it as colder than the room after the Queen's passing. Let's start with the part no one saw, the meeting inside Clarence House. A private gathering. Only select senior royals invited. Camilla, Princess Anne, Prince Edward and Sophie, the King, and a handful of trusted advisors. William stood at one end of the room. Kate stood beside him, poised, calm, unreadable. Aides waited at the periphery, ready to take notes or fetch tea. The moment felt ceremonial, anticipatory, tense. Everyone knew this wasn't just a formality. It was a statement. And everyone sensed that the name would carry more weight than any baby name had in decades. So William spoke. He didn't make a dramatic speech. He didn't ramble. He didn't embellish. He simply said, with that steady, even voice he inherited from neither parent, "We've chosen the name Diana Elizabeth." Silence. Not shock. Not gasps. Not applause. Just silence. That long, heavy, suffocating silence you only hear when a truth hits so deeply it cuts through every layer of protocol. And then, the reactions began. Not all at once. Slowly, cautiously, revealing more about the royal family's unspoken fractures than any public scandal ever could. Let's break it down, because each reaction matters. First, Camilla. People underestimate Camilla. They reduce her to tabloid caricatures. They ignore the complexity behind her public transformation. But inside the palace, she is keenly aware, painfully aware, of her position in Diana's shadow. So when she heard the name Diana Elizabeth, her face tightened for just a moment, just long enough for anyone watching closely to catch it. But she recovered quickly. She offered a soft smile, a measured nod. "Beautiful name," she said. But insiders swear her voice was thinner than usual. They swear her eyes didn't match the warmth of her words. They swear Camilla's reaction wasn't disapproval, but discomfort. Why? Because Diana's name carries weight Camilla can't escape. No matter how beloved she's become, no matter how respected she is, no matter how loyal she has been to Charles. The past is the past, and shadows do not disappear when you step into the light. But Camilla wasn't the real problem. Next came Princess Anne. Now, Anne is the wild card of the Windsors. Blunt, unfiltered, unbothered by public reaction. A woman who speaks in direct lines, not polite circles. She didn't hesitate. She looked William straight in the eye and said, "Well, that'll stir things. Not approval, not criticism, just truth. And doesn't do sentiment. She doesn't do dramatics. She doesn't do nostalgia. But she does respect strength." And when she turned toward Kate and saw the determination in her eyes, and nodded again, this time with something closer to admiration. Because Anne recognized that Kate wasn't choosing the name to stir drama. She was choosing it to honor two women who defined their eras. Even Anne respected that. Then came Edward and Sophie. They were the calmest of the group. Sophie's eyes brightened. She actually smiled, warm and genuine. "Oh, that's lovely," she whispered to Kate. Edward nodded. Supportive, understanding, kind. The two of them have always been closest to William and Kate, emotionally, strategically, personally. They know what it feels like to be overshadowed by louder relatives. They know what it means to choose dignity over drama. They know what it means to carry responsibility quietly. So their approval meant more than most people realize. But the reaction that mattered most, the one everyone was waiting for, was King Charles's. He hadn't moved. Not a muscle. Not a blink. Just sat there, hands folded, eyes fixed on the carpet. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He didn't speak. And that silence was deafening. Because Charles had every reason to feel conflicted. The name Diana is a reminder of his past. A past he has spent decades trying to reconcile. A past that shaped him as much as it shattered him. A past the public never lets him forget. But the name Elizabeth? That name was sacred to him. It was the name of the mother he adored. The monarch whose shadow he lived under for 70 years. The woman whose death left him emotionally raw and exposed in a way he rarely admits. So maybe he was moved. Maybe he was touched. Maybe he was overwhelmed. But in that moment, nobody could read him. Not William. Not Kate. Not Camilla. Not his advisors. His silence filled the room like fog. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Charles raised his head and said, "It is a meaningful choice. Meaningful. Not wonderful. Not perfect. Not beautiful. Meaningful." A word so neutral it could be interpreted in 1,000 ways. And William felt it. He felt that distance. That hesitation. That shadow of uncertainty. Kate felt it too. She exchanged a glance with William, a glance that said everything. This was not approval. This was acceptance at best. Reluctance at worst. And yet, even this wasn't the worst reaction. Because just as William finished speaking, just as the room began to settle, just as the tension started shifting into something like stability, a staff member at the door noticed someone else. A figure who had been invited but never stepped forward. A figure whose reaction mattered almost as much as the king's. A figure whose voice carried more emotional power in the Diana narrative than any other living royal. Charles Spencer, Diana's brother. He hadn't said a word. He hadn't moved. He stood with his arms crossed, expression unreadable, eyes cold as winter glass. Everyone assumed he was listening quietly. Everyone assumed he was processing. Everyone assumed he was absorbing the news. But then he did something that made the entire room tense. He turned. He walked toward the exit. And he left. No congratulations. No approval. No acknowledgement. Just silence. And if Charles Spencer's silence was a warning bell, the reaction that followed next was a full siren. Because another royal, one many people expected to be thrilled, reacted in a way so sharp, so unexpected, so emotionally charged that staff still talk about it behind closed doors. A royal whose approval William assumed he already had. A royal who adored children. A royal who loved the queen deeply. A royal who should have welcomed this tribute with open arms. But instead, they reacted with a silence so icy, so deliberate, so heavy that Camilla later asked a senior aide, "Was that intentional?" It was. Because silence from Queen Elizabeth's eldest daughter is one thing. Silence from Charles Spencer is another. But silence from this specific royal? That was a message, a warning, a declaration, a line drawn in emotional stone. And it left the palace whispering for days. Because that silence didn't just reveal disapproval. It revealed a fracture inside the family, one tied to jealousy, legacy, memory, and fear. And the royal who stayed silent? Their identity changes the entire story. Because when William learned who it wasn't anger he felt. It was heartbreak. The moment the name Diana Elizabeth reached California, something happened that no one inside the palace predicted. Harry froze. Not for a second. Not for a breath. Not for a moment of surprise. He froze the way someone freezes when the past slams into the present with the force of a tidal wave. The kind of freeze that isn't confusion, but recognition. He knew, instantly, what this name meant. To the world, it was a tribute. But to Harry, it was a message. A message that reopened an emotional wound he thought he'd buried under palm trees, sunshine, and a carefully curated life thousands of miles away. Let's rewind just a little. Harry was sitting in the kitchen of his Montecito home, coffee in hand, scrolling his phone. Noon sunlight was pouring through the wide glass windows. Peaceful, calm, normal. The kind of morning he once dreamed about during dark days inside the palace. And then, the notification appeared. A single message from a friend in London. They named her Diana Elizabeth. Harry's thumb hovered over the screen. His breath hitched. Everything around him blurred for a moment. The humming refrigerator, the soft music in the background, even the dog at his feet waiting for attention. And for reasons he didn't expect, didn't understand, didn't want to confront. His hand started shaking. Not because William used the name Diana. Harry had always known that would happen someday. He had accepted it, privately, long before Lilibet was born. But because of the timing, the intention, the combination, the message it sent to the world and to him. Let's be honest. The relationship between William and Harry is broken. Not strained, not cracked, broken. And naming a baby Diana, especially for William, wasn't a small gesture. It was monumental. It was the kind of gesture that grabs international headlines instantly. The kind of gesture that reinforces William as Diana's torchbearer. The kind of gesture that makes the world rethink which brother truly carried her legacy. And Harry felt it. Deeply. Because here's the truth many people don't like to say out loud. Harry believed he was the one who honored Diana most. He thought he was the one who rebelled for her. The one who protected her spirit. The one who refused the institution she felt crushed by. The one who fought her battles. Even years after her death. And then William? Quiet, reserved, diplomatic William? He revealed a name that instantly overshadowed Harry's emotional narrative. A name that reminded the world. William was Diana's eldest. William walked behind the coffin first. William carried the burden of expectation. William inherited the legacy of duty. William had the Spencer blue eyes, the quiet strength, the calm kindness everyone associated with Diana. And now, William had the daughter named after her. Do you see the emotional imbalance forming? Do you feel the tension yet? Because Harry did. This wasn't about competition, not directly. This wasn't about jealousy, not at first. This wasn't about Meghan, not yet. This was about identity. Harry once believed Diana's fire lived in him. But now, the name Diana Elizabeth made him question that story. And that's when Meghan entered the room. She walked in and noticed his expression immediately. Meghan knows Harry better than anyone. She can decode him in seconds. What happened? She asked. Harry didn't answer. He just handed her the phone. She read the message. Blink. Stare. Pause. Then she whispered one sentence. Oh. Not excitement. Not warmth. Not support. Just oh. And that tiny word carried enough tension to fill a palace corridor. Now, remember, Meghan has her own complicated relationship with royal names. When she and Harry named their daughter Lilibet Diana, the world exploded. Critics accused them of overstepping. Royalists accused them of exploiting. Insiders claimed the Queen was confused. Others insisted the Queen approved verbally. The name became a battleground, and Meghan never forgot how that felt. So seeing William and Kate announce Diana, Elizabeth immediately pressed on old bruises. Not physically, emotionally, symbolically, strategically. The name Lilibet Diana suddenly shifted. It wasn't the only tribute anymore. It wasn't the definitive tribute. It wasn't the headline-grabbing tribute. And Meghan felt that imbalance instantly. Let's zoom in on her reaction. She read the name again. Diana, Elizabeth. Her jaw tightened. Her shoulders tensed. Her breathing changed. Because suddenly, the story shifted from Meghan and Harry's narrative to William and Kate's narrative. And Meghan, who is hyper-aware of public perception, understood exactly how the media would react. She could already hear the headlines forming. The rightful tribute. The legitimate Diana heir. The future queen honoring her mother-in-law. William reclaims Diana's legacy. Meghan knew what those narratives meant, and she didn't like it. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. The comparison no one wants to admit is real. Meghan and Kate don't just exist in the same family. They exist in the same spotlight. Side by side. Always compared. Always contrasted. And name choices? They're part of that comparison. So when Kate and William announced a name that carried both Diana and Elizabeth, two of the most iconic women in royal history, Meghan felt something twist inside her. Call it frustration. Call it insecurity. Call it defensiveness. Call it strategic alarm. Whatever it wasn't positive. And what she did next? That's where the story takes a turn. According to a Montecito insider, someone who has spoken anonymously more than once, Meghan walked straight to the living room, picked up her phone, and made a call. Not to her mother. Not to a friend. Not to her PR team. She called someone in London, a former palace staffer, one she had maintained contact with long after leaving the royal family. The content of that call remains unverified. But here's what IS verified. Within hours of Meghan's phone call, palace aides were informed of rumors circulating from a Sussex-adjacent source. Rumors suggesting that William and Kate had chosen the name strategically. Rumors implying that the tribute was performative, calculated, designed to overshadow Lilibet Diana, designed to claim the Diana legacy once and for all. And here's the kicker. These rumors spread fast. Too fast. Faster than any organic leak. It was as if someone wanted them to spread. As if someone wanted to ensure that the world saw the name not just as a tribute, but as a political statement. Let's take a breath here. Let's slow it down. Let's ask the question that matters. Did Meghan intentionally stir the pot? Or was she reacting emotionally to a decision that hit a tender nerve? We may never know the full truth. But we do know this. When palace aides discussed the leak, they didn't blame tabloids. They didn't blame journalists. They didn't blame the public. They blamed someone with direct access to the Sussex narrative. And they acted fast. Within hours, a senior advisor issued a statement on background. The Prince and Princess of Wales chose the name with deep personal meaning. There is no competitive intent. Competitive. That word speaks volumes. Meanwhile, back in Montecito, Harry was spiraling emotionally. Not anger. Not rage. Not jealousy. Something more complex. Something raw. Something tied to grief. Because for Harry, the name Diana is not symbolic. It's sacred. And when he saw William claim that symbolism publicly, something inside him shifted. He didn't blame William. He didn't blame Kate. He didn't blame the palace. He blamed the one thing he's always blamed. The institution. The machine. The pressure that pulled the brothers apart. The legacy that divides instead of unites. The expectations that turned Diana into a myth instead of a memory. And that's when things escalated. Because Harry did something next that he rarely does anymore. He reached for the phone. He called William. Yes, you read that right. He called his brother. And here's the stunning part. William didn't pick up. Not the first time. Not the second. Not the third. Harry kept trying. 3 calls. 1 voicemail. Silence. Now ask yourself, why didn't William answer? Was he overwhelmed? Was he afraid of confrontation? Was he protecting Kate? Was he worried the conversation would spiral? Or was he simply done? We don't know. But we do know what Harry did next. He turned to Meghan. And he said something that stunned her. He's taking her back, Harry whispered. Mum's memory. He's taking it back. Meghan didn't react immediately. She didn't comfort him. She didn't lecture him. She just watched him. Because for the first time in a long time, Harry seemed lost. Not angry. Not defensive. Not rebellious. lost, conflicted, hurting. And what Meghan said next would determine everything. She said, "Then you need to tell your side before they erase it." Erase. There's that word again. The same word 15-year-old William whispered in Diana's room. The same word Harry has internalized for decades. The same word that defines the emotional war between the brothers. Erase. Because none of it, is just about a baby name. It's about legacy, memory, identity, narrative. And the moment Meghan said that sentence, Harry's expression changed. Not in anger, in determination. And he made a decision. A decision that would send a shockwave straight into Kensington Palace. Because Harry didn't just want to talk. He wanted to make sure someone else heard from him directly. Someone who would understand the emotional depth behind his words. Someone who once played a crucial role in the family's story. Someone who could confirm what he felt or deny it. Someone connected both to Diana and the monarchy. And that person? That's where the next chapter begins. Because the phone call Harry made next. It didn't go to a royal. It didn't go to a friend. It didn't go to Meghan's team. It went to someone whose reaction absolutely nobody expected. What if I told you that the moment William and Kate revealed the name Diana Elizabeth, they didn't just spark emotional reactions? They didn't just nudge old wounds? They didn't just poke at buried resentment? They reopened a feud. A feud that has existed inside the royal family for generations. A feud older than William and Harry. Older than Charles and Diana. Older than the Queen herself. Because naming royal babies isn't just a tradition. It's a battlefield. And the minute the name, Diana Elizabeth, left William's lips, the ghosts of old naming wars stirred awake. But before we dive into the centuries-old drama, let's begin with the moment from the last chapter. Harry had just made a call. Not to William. Not to Meghan's PR team. Not to a journalist. He called someone unexpected. Someone tied deeply to Diana's legacy. Someone tied to royal history. Someone who would add fuel to a fire the palace had tried to put out for decades. But we'll get there, because we need to understand the battlefield first. We need to talk about the one royal tradition that has caused more internal conflict than any coronation dispute, any marriage scandal, any succession crisis. The naming of children. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But ask yourself, why does the monarchy care so much about names? Why does every name seem to carry a hidden message? Why do some names spark admiration, while others spark controversy? Because in the royal world, a name is a statement, a declaration, a loyalty test, a political weapon, a line drawn in history. Names are how the monarchy communicates with the world without saying a word. Now let me take you behind the curtain. Royal naming traditions fall into 4 categories, each with its own unspoken rules and silent tensions. And the feud around Diana Elizabeth taps into all 4. Category 1, Legacy. These are names chosen to honor ancestors, monarchs, historical figures. George, Charlotte, Victoria, Edward, Philip. Legacy names say, we respect the institution. We respect history. We respect our lineage. Category 2, Symbolism. These names signal meaning or intention. Hope, grace, faith. Rare in royal circles, but powerful when used. Category 3, Alignment. These names align a child with a specific branch of the family or specific royal values. Elizabeth, Anne, Margaret. Names chosen to show loyalty to a particular line. Category 4, Defiance. These are the names that break rules. Names that shake the monarchy. Names that carry controversy. Diana, Wallis, Camilla, before it was accepted. Names that say, we're choosing the heart over the crown. So imagine this. William didn't pick just one category. He picked 2. And not just any 2. He picked the 2 that have been in tension for decades. Legacy and defiance. Diana, defiance. Elizabeth, legacy. The combination shook the monarchy. It sent a mixed message. It reopened old emotional wounds. Because to some in the family, you cannot mix Diana and Elizabeth without stirring trouble. Those 2 names don't just belong to 2 women. They belong to 2 philosophies, 2 eras, 2 visions of the monarchy. Elizabeth, stability, tradition, duty, silence. Diana, humanity, emotion, rebellion, vulnerability. Uniting them in one child? That's not just symbolic. That's revolutionary. And some royals hate revolutions. Now let's talk about the feud this naming reopened. The feud few outsiders know about. The feud began long before William and Harry were born. It began with Queen Victoria, who dominated naming traditions so fiercely that her children and grandchildren lived in fear of disappointing her with a common, unsuitable, or politically risky name. But the real modern naming war began with the Queen's father, King George VI, who upset palace elders by naming his daughter Elizabeth. They said it was too bold, too ambitious, too heavy. Imagine that. Today, Elizabeth is the most iconic royal name in living memory. But at the time, it sparked a feud. And generations later, the cycle repeated. When Charles and Diana named William, palace officials reportedly pushed for Arthur. Charles considered it. Diana refused. Tension brewed. When they named Harry, Diana suggested Harry, a short form of Henry, while Charles leaned toward Albert. Diana won that round too. Then came William and Kate. George, unanimous approval. Charlotte, some raised eyebrows. Louis, a complete surprise to many. Even the late Queen once said that naming royal babies is more complicated than outsiders might expect. No kidding. Now let's zoom into the present. Inside Buckingham Palace, the moment the name Diana Elizabeth was spoken, a current of tension rushed through the room. Because some royals believed William was making a political play. Naming a child after Elizabeth signals continuity, respect, alignment with the crown and its future. Naming her after Diana signals boldness, public sympathy, emotional resonance. But combining the two, that sends a message that William is forming his own identity, his own power base, built from the two women the monarchy depended on most. And that terrifies some people. Now let's talk about the specific feud this ignited between William and someone inside the family. The person who went silent. Remember them? The one whose reaction chilled the room? The one the palace staff whispered about? The one whose disapproval mattered? Princess Anne. Yes, Princess Anne. The Queen's eldest daughter. The royal with the longest memory. The royal with the sharpest instincts. The royal who always understood the emotional fault lines of the family. And is a realist. She doesn't indulge nostalgia. She doesn't get sentimental. She doesn't like dramatics. And in Anne's eyes, William's name choice wasn't just sentimental. It was complicated. Why? Because Anne adored her mother. She respected her deeply. She believed Elizabeth represented the heart of the monarchy. But Anne also respected Diana, in her own way, for her compassion, her warmth, her work with the vulnerable. However, Anne never believed Diana and Elizabeth should be compared, contrasted, or combined. She believed they belonged in separate boxes, separate legacies, separate eras, separate chapters. So when William and Kate combined the two names, and felt it blurred lines that should never mix. And she wasn't the only one. Another royal, one much closer to Diana, took this even harder. And that's where the feud truly ignites. Because Charles Spencer, Diana's brother, has always been fiercely protective of her memory. He's fought hard to protect the truth of her story. He's fought hard against the palace rewriting history. He's fought hard against anyone using her name for optics. So when he heard William's announcement, he didn't just walk out because he was overwhelmed. He walked out because he felt conflicted. On one hand, he loves his nephew. He knows William adored his mother. He knows William is the one who truly carries Diana's kindness. But on the other hand, Charles Spencer has never forgiven the monarchy for what Diana endured. So hearing her name combined with Elizabeth, the name representing the crown Diana felt trapped under, struck a nerve so deep it stunned him into silence. He didn't know whether to feel touched or betrayed, which is why he left without speaking. But this tension, the Spencer tension, is what Harry tapped into when he made that unexpected phone call at the end of the last chapter. Harry didn't call a royal. He didn't call a friend. He didn't call someone on Meghan's team. He called Charles Spencer, his uncle, Diana's brother, the one man who could validate what Harry felt or condemn it. Let's break down that call. According to someone close to the Spencer family, Harry's voice cracked when he said, "I just don't understand what William is doing. This wasn't anger. This wasn't resentment. This wasn't rivalry. It was vulnerability. Raw grief. The kind of vulnerability only someone who lost their mother the same way could understand." But Charles Spencer didn't respond with reassurance. He didn't soothe him. He didn't console him. He didn't tell him he was overreacting. He asked a single question. "Why does this trouble you so much?" Because Charles Spencer knows something most people forget. Harry's emotional battles are not about William. They're about Diana. His fear of being erased. His fear of losing connection. His fear of losing identity. His fear that the monarchy would claim Diana's memory and mold it into something she never was. But then Charles Spencer said something else. Something that would echo into the next chapter. He told Harry, "You and William both carry her. But you carry different parts." Harry didn't respond. He didn't know how to. Because that sentence forced him to confront something uncomfortable. The notion that honoring Diana isn't a competition. The possibility that William naming his daughter Diana wasn't an attack, but a fulfillment. The idea that the two brothers weren't meant to carry the same legacy. But before Harry could process that fully, Meghan walked into the room again. She had just read something, a public reaction, a media headline, or a message from someone in their circle, and her expression told Harry everything. The name wasn't just a family issue anymore. It had gone public. Fast. Too fast. Suspiciously fast. And what Meghan said next would change the tone of the entire naming story. They're saying someone inside this family is furious. Furious enough to speak to the press. Harry's stomach dropped, because he already knew who that someone was. And the one royal whose reaction was about to hit the headlines. Was the one royal whose anger could destabilize everything. If you think the palace was shaken by the name Diana Elizabeth, you should have seen what happened the moment the news reached Diana's sisters. People often forget about them. Lady Sarah McCorquodale, Lady Jane Fellows. Two women who have stayed out of royal drama for decades. Two women who never chased the spotlight. Two women who carry Diana's memory not as a myth, but as a sisterhood scarred by loss. They don't speak much to the press. They don't give interviews. They don't weigh in publicly on royal disputes. They protect the quiet sanctity of Diana's life. But the minute they heard the name William and Kate chose, something broke inside them. Not a fracture. Not a wound. Not anger. Something softer. Something older. Something the royal family rarely acknowledges. Human emotion. Let's rewind to how the news reached them. Unlike Charles Spencer, who learned the name in the room with William, Lady Sarah and Lady Jane heard it from a phone call. Not from a staffer. Not from a leaked article. Not from the media. From William himself. Yes, William personally called Diana's sisters. He didn't have to. There was no duty. No protocol. No expectation. He chose to do it. And the moment they heard his voice, they knew something important was coming. Picture it. Lady Jane sitting in her study, surrounded by framed photographs of Diana, smiling the way only sisters remember. Lady Sarah in her garden, trimming roses, Diana's favorite, when her phone buzzed. They both answered the same way. William. His tone was calm, measured, respectful, the way a man speaks to women who shaped the mother he adored. He didn't prolong the suspense. He didn't dance around the point. He didn't sugarcoat. He said, "We've chosen the name Diana Elizabeth." Lady Jane gasped. Lady Sarah went silent. Long silent. Because for them, hearing Diana's name spoken in the present tense is like hearing a ghost breathe again. Jane was the first to speak. "Oh, William," she whispered, voice trembling. "Your mother would be so moved." Sarah said nothing. Not at first. It wasn't shock. It wasn't disapproval. It was something deeper. Sarah was the oldest. The protective one. The one who first encouraged Diana to date Charles. The one who regretted it for the rest of her life. So when she finally spoke, her words weren't light. "Are you sure you want to give her that burden?" Burden. That word hit William hard. Because Sarah wasn't questioning his love for Diana. She was questioning the weight of the legacy. And she had every right to. To the world, the name Diana is hope, love, compassion, humanity. But to the people who knew her intimately, it's also pain, loss, hunted fame, loneliness behind palace walls. Sarah knew what a name could do. How the world projected its expectations. How the spotlight swallowed the private person inside. So asking that question wasn't disapproval. It was protection. William responded softly. "I don't want to give her a burden. I want to give her a bond." That sentence, that single sentence, made both sisters cry. Not loud, not dramatic, not theatrical.